The day my daughter-in-law screamed at me to pay rent or get out of my own house, I knew 43 years of memories meant nothing to her. I sold it the next morning. Margaret's teacup sits cold in my hands now, the only piece I kept from our old life. 2 years have passed since I lost everything that mattered. Not to death this time, but to greed wearing the mask of family love. Hermione came to us as Peeta's salvation, all bright smiles and practical solutions. I welcomed her like the daughter I never had. Such a fool I was. I am Atticus Finley, 72 years old. A retired librarian who believed books taught you everything about human nature. I was wrong. Margaret and I built our life in that house on Maple Street, white picket fence. Red front door she painted herself every spring. 3 bedrooms upstairs. A kitchen where sunlight danced through yellow curtains every morning for 4 decades. We raised Peeta there, watched him take his first steps on those hardwood floors. Bandaged scraped knees on the front porch steps. Celebrated every birthday, every graduation, every milestone that mattered. When he brought Hermione home 6 years ago, Margaret made her favorite pot roast. Set the good china. Lit candles like it was Christmas morning. Hermione arrived in a crisp business suit, hair pulled back sharp enough to cut glass. Real estate agent, she explained, ambitious, focused. She's perfect for him, Margaret whispered to me later that night. Look how happy he is. And Peeta was happy, happier than I'd seen him since college. He straightened his shoulders when Hermione spoke, laughed at her jokes. Hung on every word like she held the secrets to the universe. The wedding was small, elegant. Hermione chose everything. The flowers, the cake, even the music. Margaret didn't mind, said it was the bride's day after all. We just wanted Peeta to be happy. Hermione moved into their apartment downtown. Career-focused, she said, no time for suburban life. They visited every other Sunday. Polite conversation over coffee and Margaret's homemade cookies. Then Margaret got sick. Cancer came like a thief in the night, quiet at first, a cough that wouldn't leave. Fatigue she blamed on gardening too long. By the time we caught it, the disease had already made itself at home in her lungs. 8 months. That's all we had left together. Hermione started visiting more during those final weeks. Brought flowers. Expensive ones from the florist downtown, not the wildflowers Margaret preferred from our garden. She'd sit beside the bed talking about market trends and property values while Margaret dozed. Such a caring girl, Margaret would say after they left. Peeta chose well. The funeral came and went like a summer storm, violent. Brief, leaving everything changed in its wake. I found myself alone in that big house with nothing but echoes and memories. Every room held Margaret's ghost. Her coffee cup still sat by the kitchen sink, her reading glasses on the nightstand. Her favorite sweater draped over the chair where she used to knit. I stopped eating proper meals. Cereal for dinner became normal. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by dreams where Margaret was still there, still laughing, still filling the empty spaces with her warmth. Peeta noticed during one of his visits, found me in Margaret's chair at 3 in the afternoon, still in yesterday's clothes, staring at nothing. Dad, you can't go on like this, he called Hermione. They huddled in the kitchen, voices low but urgent. I caught fragments, worried phrases, practical solutions. The house is too big for him alone. He's not taking care of himself. Someone needs to keep an eye on him. The next Sunday, they presented their plan. Temporary arrangement, they called it, just until I got back on my feet. They'd move in, help with expenses, make sure I ate proper meals. Hermione could work from the house, save money on their apartment lease. We're family, Peeta said. Family takes care of each other. It made sense, perfect sense. I was drowning in that empty house and they were throwing me a lifeline. Your mother would want this, I told Peeta. She'd want you to be here. Hermione smiled, first genuine smile I'd seen from her since the funeral. We'll take good care of you, Atticus, and the house. They moved in the following weekend. Hermione immediately set about organizing. Rearranging, improving, she called it. Little changes at first. New curtains in the living room, different soap in the bathrooms. Practical adjustments, she explained. Margaret's herb garden disappeared within a month. Replaced with a neat row of vegetables. More useful, Hermione said, tomatoes and peppers instead of the lavender and rosemary Margaret had tended for 20 years. My study became Hermione's office. Real estate required space, she explained, professional atmosphere for client calls. I moved my books to the basement, cardboard boxes stacked in corners where moisture made the pages curl. Just temporary, she promised, until we figure out a better system. But temporary had a way of becoming permanent in that house. 6 months passed like pages torn from a calendar. Each day brought new changes, small ones. Subtle shifts that happened so gradually I barely noticed until they'd already taken root. Margaret's favorite rocking chair disappeared from the front porch. Hermione said it looked shabby. Gave the wrong impression to her clients when they drove by. She replaced it with 2 modern metal chairs. Clean lines, no character. No memories of Margaret sitting there every evening, watching the neighborhood children ride their bicycles home for dinner. The kitchen underwent transformation next. Margaret's collection of mismatched coffee mugs vanished, replaced with a matching white set from some expensive store downtown. Hermione said uniformity looked more professional, more put together. I found Margaret's favorite mug in a donation box by the garage. The one with faded roses that Peta made in art class 20 years ago. Chipped handle, stain ring on the bottom from decades of morning coffee. I rescued it. Hid it in my bedroom dresser drawer. The living room followed suit. Margaret's handmade quilts disappeared. Her collection of vintage books. The family photos spanning 4 decades of birthdays and holidays and ordinary Tuesday afternoons that meant everything. All boxed up, stored away. Clutter makes spaces feel smaller, Hermione explained when I asked about the photographs. We need to stage this house properly. Stage. Like our home had become a theater set instead of the place where we'd lived our entire lives. I started spending more time in my bedroom. The only space that still felt like mine, still held traces of Margaret's presence. Her perfume bottle on the dresser, her favorite cardigan hanging in the closet, her bookmark still pressed between the pages of the novel she never finished reading. Hermione knocked one morning. Asked if she could store some files in my bedroom closet just temporarily. Her office was getting cramped. Of course, I said. What else could I say? Margaret's clothes shifted to one corner. Made room for boxes of real estate contracts and property listings. Her presence shrinking day by day, pushed aside by papers and folders and the relentless march of Hermione's expanding territory. Meals became scheduled events, 7 sharp for breakfast, noon for lunch, 6 for dinner. Hermione said routine was important. Structure helped with grief recovery. She'd read articles, studies. Scientific proof that organization aided healing. But healing felt impossible when every familiar thing kept disappearing. The dining room became Hermione's secondary office space. Client meetings required proper staging, she said. Professional atmosphere. Margaret's china cabinet moved to the basement. The good dishes packed away, replaced with modern place settings that looked like they belonged in a magazine spread instead of a family home. I ate my meals quickly. Quietly, listening to Hermione discuss market trends and property values while I pushed food around plates that held no memories. No connection to the life Margaret and I had built together. Peta seemed oblivious to the changes. Or maybe he chose not to see them. He'd arrive home from work, kiss Hermione hello, and dive into conversations about her latest deals, her success stories, her ambitious plans for expanding the business. I became background noise in my own house. Dad's doing so much better, I heard him tell someone on the phone one evening. Hermione's really helping him get organized. You wouldn't recognize the place. He was right. I barely recognized it myself. The garden suffered next. Margaret's roses pulled up. Her carefully tended flower beds replaced with practical landscaping. Low maintenance, Hermione called it, efficient. No need for daily watering or seasonal pruning, or the gentle care Margaret had given every plant for 20 years. I watched from the kitchen window as strangers destroyed Margaret's life's work in a single afternoon. Decades of love and attention erased for the sake of efficiency. The dogwood tree survived, too big to remove easily. But Hermione had the lower branches trimmed back, said it blocked too much light from the living room windows. Made the space feel closed in. Margaret used to say that tree was like a blessing, showering the yard with white petals every spring, like confetti celebrating another year of life together. Now it looked naked, exposed, diminished. Christmas arrived with military precision. Hermione planned everything. The menu, the decorations, the guest list. She invited her parents, her sister's family, people who'd never known Margaret. Never sat around our table sharing stories and laughter and the comfortable chaos of family traditions. Scout came home from college. My granddaughter walked through the front door and stopped. Stood perfectly still in the entryway, looking around like she'd entered the wrong house. "Grandpa," she said quietly, "where's everything?" Everything. Such a simple word for the accumulated weight of a lifetime. The photographs and quilts and coffee mugs and rocking chairs that held the essence of who we'd been, who Margaret had been. Your grandmother Hermione thought the house needed updating, I said. The words tasted bitter. Scout's eyes found mine. 16 years old and seeing everything with the clarity that comes before life teaches you to look away from uncomfortable truths. Where's Grandma's china cabinet? In the basement. Hermione needed the space for client meetings. Scout nodded slowly, said nothing more, but I saw understanding pass across her face. Recognition of something lost. Something important that couldn't be measured in square footage or professional appearance or market appeal. That night she knocked on my bedroom door. Found me sitting on the edge of the bed, holding Margaret's rescued coffee mug. "Tell me about Grandma," she said. So I did. Told her about the roses and the quilts and the way Margaret hummed while she cooked Sunday dinner. The way she saved the funny comics from the newspaper to share over morning coffee. How she knew every neighbor's name and remembered their birthdays and always had time to listen when someone needed to talk. Scout listened without interrupting. When I finished, she hugged me, tight and fierce and full of understanding. I miss her too, Grandpa. For the first time in months, I didn't feel invisible. Spring arrived early that year. The dogwood bloomed despite its trimmed branches. Margaret always said trees remember their purpose even when everything else changes. I should have remembered mine. The dinner party was Hermione's idea. Important clients, she said, big commission at stake, the house needed to look perfect, feel lived in but not cluttered, professional but welcoming. She spent the entire week preparing, hired cleaners to scrub surfaces that were already spotless, bought fresh flowers to replace the ones she'd planted over Margaret's roses, set out candles and arranged furniture like pieces on a chessboard. Atticus, you'll need to stay upstairs during the dinner, she announced the morning of the party, just until they leave. These clients are very particular about atmosphere. Atmosphere. I was apparently bad for atmosphere. I nodded, agreed. What choice did I have? This was temporary after all. Just one evening, Hermione's career was important. Peeta's happiness depended on her success. The guests arrived at 7, 4 couples, all polished and professional, voices that carried through the walls of my own house while I sat in my bedroom like a child sent to his room for misbehaving. They praised the staging, the clean lines, the modern aesthetic, how bright and open everything felt without all that old-fashioned clutter. I listened to strangers compliment the destruction of my life with Margaret. By 9 o'clock I needed water, my mouth felt dry, cotton thick. The prescription medications made me thirsty, but I'd forgotten to bring a glass upstairs before the banishment began. I waited, listened for a break in conversation. A moment when the kitchen might be empty. The laughter grew louder, wine loosening tongues and inhibitions, perfect cover for a quick trip downstairs. I put on my robe. Soft slippers that wouldn't make noise on the hardwood floors Margaret had insisted we install when Peeta started crawling. 38 years those floors had heard our footsteps, our conversations, our quiet moments and celebration dances and ordinary Tuesday evening routines. The kitchen was empty, glasses and plates scattered across counters. Evidence of the feast happening in my dining room. I filled a glass from the tap. The same tap Margaret used every morning to water her windowsill herbs. Atticus. Hermione's voice cut through the quiet like a blade. She stood in the doorway, wine glass in hand, face flushed with embarrassment and something sharper. Anger. Behind her, the dinner guests had gone silent. 8 pairs of eyes staring at the old man in pajamas and bathrobe shuffling around his own kitchen at 7 in the evening. What are you doing down here? The question hung in the air, heavy, loaded with implications. I was the problem, the disruption, the embarrassment that needed explaining to important people with important money. I just needed some water. We discussed this. You were supposed to stay upstairs. The guests watched like spectators at a tennis match, waiting to see who would win this volley between the professional woman and the confused old man who didn't understand boundaries. I'm sorry I forgot, but sorry wasn't enough, not with witnesses, not with clients who might question Hermione's competence if she couldn't manage her own household. Her voice rose, sharp and clear and designed to establish dominance in front of an audience. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Atticus. You can't just wander around whenever you feel like it. There are rules, expectations. If you can't respect the basic requirements of living in this house, then maybe it's time you started contributing properly. The kitchen felt smaller, tighter. 8 strangers watching an old man get scolded for wanting water in his own home. Hermione, please. No, Atticus, I'm tired of tiptoeing around this. You either start paying rent like any other tenant or you find somewhere else to live. This is our home now, our investment, our future, our home. The words hit like physical blows. Our home, not my home, not the place Margaret and I built together over 4 decades of marriage. Our home belonging to people who'd lived here barely a year. Pay rent or get out. She said it loud enough for every guest to hear, clear enough that there could be no misunderstanding. The old man was a burden, a tenant who'd outlived his welcome, a problem that needed solving. The silence stretched like elastic about to snap. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to hold its breath. Margaret's clock. The one we'd bought for our 10th anniversary because she said time moved differently when you were happy. I set the glass down carefully, hands steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest, looked at each face around the kitchen, strangers in my home, witness to my humiliation. Excuse me, I said quietly. I walked past them all, past Hermione's flushed face and righteous indignation, past the clients who'd returned to their conversations with uncomfortable laughter, past Peeta who'd appeared in the doorway but said nothing, done nothing. Chosen silence over defending his father. The stairs creaked under my feet, same creaks they'd made for 38 years. Margaret used to say she could tell my mood by how I climbed those steps. heavy when work troubled me, light when I carried good news, quick when I was excited about something waiting upstairs. Tonight they creaked with defeat. I closed the bedroom door, sat on the edge of the bed where Margaret used to brush her hair every night before sleep. Listened to the party resume below, voices rising again, laughter returning, the disruption smoothed over and forgotten. But I couldn't forget. Pay rent or get out. In the house I'd bought with money earned from 40 years of teaching children to love books. In rooms where Margaret and I had made love and raised our son and celebrated every anniversary until death separated us. Pay rent or get out. The moon shone through windows that had framed Margaret's face on thousands of nights like this. She'd sit by that glass, brushing her hair and telling me about her day. Her garden, her plans for tomorrow. What would she say about tonight? I knew the answer. Margaret would pack. She wouldn't argue or plead or try to explain why dignity mattered more than convenience. She'd simply gather her things with quiet grace and leave with her head held high. Margaret was always braver than me. But maybe it was time I learned to be brave too. I opened the dresser drawer, found her rescued coffee mug wrapped in tissue paper, held it against my chest and made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow I would be brave. Dawn broke through the bedroom windows like a promise. First light touching the dogwood tree outside, its white blossoms catching fire in the early sun. Margaret always woke before me. Said sunrise was God's daily reminder that everything could begin again. I sat in her chair by the window. Had been sitting there since midnight, watching the darkness slowly surrender to morning. The party guests had left around 11. Their laughter and conversation fading until only silence remained in the house that no longer felt like home. The phone book sat heavy in my lap. Yellow pages marked with a strip of paper torn from Margaret's bookmark. Real estate agents, dozens of them, but I knew exactly who to call. Mrs. Chen next door had mentioned her nephew during one of our garden conversations last summer. Young man with honest eyes, she'd said, bought houses for cash. No banks, no waiting, no complicated paperwork that dragged on for months. I dialed the number at 7 sharp. Chen Properties. This is Atticus Finley. Your Aunt Mrs. Chen gave me your number. I have a house to sell. What's your timeline, Mr. Finley? Immediately. The word surprised me with its firmness. No hesitation, no doubt. Margaret would have been proud of that clarity. He arrived at 9. Young man in a clean shirt and kind eyes, just as Mrs. Chen had described. Walked through every room with quiet respect, noting details in a small leather notebook. Asked permission before opening closets. Apologized for the intrusion. Beautiful home, he said in the kitchen. Well maintained, good bones, the staging is very professional. Professional, Hermione's word for the systematic erasure of Margaret's presence. But Mr. Chen meant it as a compliment and I accepted it as such. How much? He named a figure. Fair market value, no haggling, no negotiations. Just an honest assessment of what our life together was worth in dollars and cents. Cash sale close in 30 days, is that acceptable? Perfect. I signed the papers with Margaret's favorite blue pen, the one she used for grocery lists and thank you notes and birthday cards that always arrived exactly on time. Blue for beginnings, she used to say, black was for endings. This felt like both. The moving truck came 2 weeks later, not the big company trucks with uniforms and corporate logos. A smaller outfit recommended by Mrs. Chen. 2 brothers who treated each box like it held treasures instead of just one old man's remaining possessions. I packed light, Margaret's coffee mug, her favorite sweater, a handful of photographs rescued from storage boxes, the clock from our bedroom nightstand, books that had survived the basement exile, pieces small enough to carry but large enough to hold memories. The apartment was perfect, small but bright. Second floor of a converted Victorian house 6 blocks from downtown. 1 bedroom. Tiny kitchen with a window that caught morning light. Living room just big enough for Margaret's rescued rocking chair and the lamp where she used to read novels until I fell asleep to the sound of turning pages. Best of all, it was mine, every square inch, every light switch, every breath of air that moved through rooms nobody else controlled. Moving day arrived like Christmas morning. I woke early, dressed carefully, and waited for the inevitable confrontation. Hermione and Peeta had been traveling for work, due back that afternoon, perfect timing. They pulled into the driveway at 3 o'clock, saw the moving truck. The boxes being loaded with systematic efficiency, my small collection of salvaged belongings disappearing into the back of someone else's vehicle. Peeta reached me first. Dad, what's happening? Where are you going? I found a new place. Smaller, more suitable for an old man living alone. Hermione appeared beside him, face already shifting from confusion to anger as understanding dawned. She looked at the truck, at the workers, at me standing calmly beside the front door with my coat on and car keys in my hand. You can't just leave, Atticus. We have an arrangement. We moved in to help you. And I appreciate that help, but arrangements change. Circumstances evolve. This is ridiculous, you're being dramatic. One argument doesn't mean you have to run away. Run away? Like I was a child having a tantrum instead of a 72-year-old man reclaiming his dignity. I'm not running anywhere, Hermione, I'm going home. This is your home. No, this was your house. My house was sold 2 weeks ago. The silence that followed was profound. Even the moving truck seemed to pause, workers slowing their pace to avoid disrupting whatever revelation was unfolding on the front lawn. Sold, Peta's voice cracked on the word. You sold the house? It's my house to sell. But where will we live? I assume you'll figure something out. You're both intelligent, capable adults. I have complete faith in your problem-solving abilities. Hermione stepped closer, face flushed with the same anger I'd seen in the kitchen 2 weeks ago. But this time there was no audience to perform for, no clients to impress, just family confronting the consequences of their choices. This is insane, Atticus. You're making a huge mistake. You need us. I needed respect. I got demands for rent money instead. The words hung between us like a bridge neither of them could cross. Truth has weight, substance. It doesn't bend under pressure or disappear when inconvenient. The moving truck finished loading. Driver approached with clipboard and professional smile, oblivious to the family drama playing out on his schedule. All set, Mr. Finley. We'll have everything at your new place within the hour. Thank you, I shook his hand. Tipped both workers. Watched them drive away with the last remnants of my old life secured safely in their truck. Peta stared at the empty driveway like he was trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Dad, I don't understand. We were trying to help. Help looks different when you're on the receiving end. I walked to my car, opened the driver's door. Freedom felt lighter than I'd expected, less dramatic, just the simple act of choosing my own direction. Atticus, wait. Hermione's voice had lost its edge, desperation replacing anger. We can work this out, find a compromise. You can't just abandon your family. I turned back one final time. Looked at my son standing beside the woman he'd chosen. Saw confusion in his eyes, hurt, the beginning of understanding that would take time to fully develop. I'm not abandoning anyone, Peta. I'm teaching you the difference between helping and controlling, between family and ownership, between love and convenience. The drive to my new apartment took 12 minutes. 12 minutes to cross town and step into a life where nobody could tell me to pay rent in my own home, where dignity wasn't negotiable, where Margaret's memory could exist without permission or professional staging requirements. The dogwood tree outside my new window was smaller than the one I'd left behind. Younger, still learning how to bloom properly. But it was trying, branches reaching towards sunlight with the stubborn optimism of things that refused to quit growing. Margaret would have loved that tree. I made tea in my new kitchen, used her rescued coffee mug. Watched the afternoon light paint patterns on walls that belonged entirely to me. Tomorrow Scout would visit. She'd called 3 times since hearing about the move, voice bright with something that sounded like pride. Said she wanted to see my new place, help me arrange furniture. Maybe plant some flowers in the small garden space behind the building. Family takes many forms. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Love isn't automatic just because you share a name. Real family shows up, pays attention. Treats you like a person instead of a problem to manage. The tea grew cold while I planned tomorrow's conversation with my granddaughter, stories to share, pictures to show. Memories to pass along about the grandmother she was still learning to miss, and the grandfather she was just beginning to truly know. Outside, the young dogwood caught the last light of day, white blossoms glowing like stars that had forgotten they were supposed to wait for darkness. Some things bloom exactly when they're meant to, regardless of the season everyone else expects.